Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome all to today's reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We've been reading from Adi Lila and we shall begin chapter 12 today, the expansions of Advaita Acharya and Gadadhar Pandit. Advaita Acharya, as we know, who was the incarnation of Sadashiv and Mahavishnu combined, and Gadadhar Pandit was, of course, Srimati Radharani. Bhakti Vinod Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhate Girim Yat Kripatam Ham Bande Shri Gurum Deen Tarinam Parmananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a summary of the 12th chapter in his Amrit Pravaha Bhashya. The 12th chapter describes the followers of Advaita Prabhu, among whom the followers of Achyutananda, the son of Advaita Acharya, are understood to be the pure followers who received the cream of the philosophy Sri Advaita Acharya enunciated. Other so-called descendants and followers of Advaita Acharya are not to be recognized. This chapter also includes narrations concerning the son of Advaita Acharya named Gopal Mishra and Advaita Acharya's servant named Kamalkant Vishwas. In his early life, Gopal fainted during the cleansing of the Gundicha Mandir at Jagannath Puri and thus became a recipient of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The story of Kamalkanta Vishwas concerns his borrowing 300 rupees from Prataprudra Maharaj to clear a debt of Advaita Acharya's, for which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chastised him when he came to know of it. Kamalkant Vishwas was then purified by the request of Sri Advaita Acharya. After describing the descendants of Advaita Acharya, the chapter concludes by describing the followers of Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. So verse number 1 of the chapter 12. Advaitangri abja bhringam stan sarasar bhrito akhilan hitva saran sar bhrito nomi chaitanya jivanan. Advaita Angri is the lotus feet of Advaita Acharya. Abja is the lotus flower. Bringan is the bumblebees. Tan, all of them. Sara, Sara, real and not real. Vrita, accepting. Akhilan, all of them. Hitva, giving up. Asaran, not real. Sar, Vrita, those who are real. Nomi, offer my obeisances. Chaitanya Jivanan, whose life and soul was Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Translation: the followers of Sri Advaita Prabhu were of two kinds. Some were real followers and the others were false. Rejecting the false followers, I offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Advaita Acharya's real followers, whose life and soul was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Verse number 2. Jai Jai Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Jai Jai Nityananda, Jai Advaita Dhanya. All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all glories to Sri Lord Nityananda, all glories to Sri Advaita Prabhu, all of them are glorious. Verse number 3. Sri Chaitanya Amar Taror Dvitiya Skandha Rupinaha Srimad Advaita Chandrasya Shakha Rupan Ganan Namaha. Namaha is, of course, I offer my respectful obeisances. I offer my respectful obeisances to the all-glorious Advaita Prabhu who forms the second branch of the eternal Chaitanya tree, and to his followers who form his sub-branches. Verse number 4. Vrikshera Dvitiya Skandha Acharya Gosani Tanra Yata Shakha Haila Tara Lekha Nani. Sri Advaita Prabhu was the second big branch of the tree. There are many sub-branches, but it is impossible to mention them all. Verse number 5. Chaitanya Malira Kripa Jalera Sichane Se Jale Pushta Skandha Bare Dine Dine. Pade is increased in Bengali, like we say bade, badhe in Hindi. Dine dine is day after day, and Sichane is by sprinkling. Sejale by that water. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also the gardener. As he poured the water of his mercy on the tree, all the branches and sub-branches grew day by day. Verse number 6, Say Skandhe Yata Prema Phala Upajila, Say Krishna Prema Phale Jagat Bharila. The fruits of love of Godhead that grew on those branches of the Chaitanya tree were so large that they flooded the entire world with love of Krishna. Verse number 7, Say Jala Skandhe Kare Shakhate Sanchar Phale Phule Bade Shakha Haila Vistar. As the trunk and branches were watered, the branches and sub-branches spread lavishly, and the tree grew full with fruits and flowers. Verse number 8, Prathame ta eka mata acharyera gana pache dui mata haila daivera karana. Daivera is the providence. Dui mata, two opinions. Pache is later. At first, all the followers of Advaita Acharya shared a single opinion, but later they followed two different opinions as ordained by the providence. Purport by Srila His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The words Daivera Karana indicate that by dint of providence or by God's will, the followers of Advaita Acharya divided into these. Such disagreement among the disciples of one Acharya is also found among the members of the Gaudiya Math. In the beginning, during the presence of Acharya Ashtotra Srimad Bhakti Siddhant Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, all the disciples worked in agreement, but just after his disappearance, they disagreed. One party strictly followed the instructions of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but the another group created their own concoction about executing his desires. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at the time of his departure, requested all his disciples to form a governing body and conduct missionary activities cooperatively. He did not instruct a particular man to become the next Acharya, but just after his passing away, his leading secretaries made plans without authority to occupy the post of Acharya, and they split into two factions over who the next Acharya would be. Consequently, both factions were asar or useless because they had no authority, having disobeyed the order of the spiritual master. Despite the spiritual master's order to form a governing body and execute the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Math, the two unauthorized factions began litigation that is still going on after 40 years with no decision. Therefore, we do not belong to any faction, but because the two parties busy dividing the material assets of the Gaudiya Math institution stopped the preaching work, we took up the mission of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur to preach the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world under the protection of all the predecessor acharyas. And we find that our humble attempt has been successful. We followed the principles especially explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, verse beginning, Vyavasayitmika buddhir ekeh kuru nandana. According to this instruction of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it is the duty of a disciple to follow strictly the orders of his spiritual master. The secret of success and advancement in spiritual life is the firm faith of the disciple in the orders of his spiritual master. The Vedas confirm this. Yassa deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha guru tasyete kathita hi arthaha prakashante mahatmanaha. To one who has staunch faith in the words of the spiritual master and the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the secrets of success in Vedic knowledge is revealed. The Krishna consciousness movement is being propagated according to this principle, and therefore our preaching work is going on successfully in spite of the many impediments offered by the antagonistic demons. Because we are getting positive help from our previous acharyas, one must judge every action by its result. The members of the self-appointed Acharya's party who occupied the property of the Gaudiya Math are satisfied, but they could make no progress in preaching. Therefore, by the result of their actions, one should know that they are asar or useless. Whereas the success of the ISKCON party, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which strictly follows Guru and Gauranga, is increasing daily all over the world. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to print as many books as possible and distribute them all over the world. We have tried our best in this connection and we are getting results beyond our expectations. Verse number 9. Keha ta acharya ajnaya keha ta swatantra swamata kalpana kare daiva paratantra. Swatantra is independently, and paratantra, as we know, is Deva Paratantra is under the spell of Maya. Some of the disciples strictly accepted the orders of the Acharya and others deviated independently, concocting their own opinions under the spell of Devi, Maya. Purport: this verse describes the beginning of a schism. When disciples do not stick to the principle of, is it schism or schism, schism? When disciples do not stick to the principle of accepting the order of the spiritual master, immediately there are two opinions. Any opinion different from the opinion of the spiritual master is useless. One cannot infiltrate materially concocted ideas into spiritual advancement, that is deviation. There is no scope for adjusting spiritual advancement to material ideas. So this is such an important purport. When we are following a bona fide spiritual master, we should listen to them and we should try to follow their teachings and understand properly. And if we'll be just listening to one person on the YouTube, for example, one day, and to some other sampradaya the other day, this way we will never understand the intricacies of the Shastras. Only a bona fide spiritual master explains them to us, and we have to follow them properly to make our understanding solid. And we can question them, we can ask them any doubts we have. Verse number 10. Acharyera mata ye se mata sara tanra ajna langhi chale se ta asar. Ajna or the Agya is order, Langhi is transgressing. The order of the spiritual master is the active principle in spiritual life. Anyone who disobeys the order of the spiritual master immediately becomes useless. But here's the opinion of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Persons who strictly follow the orders of the spiritual master are useful in executing the will of the Supreme, whereas persons who deviate from the strict order of the spiritual master are useless. Verse number 11. Asarera name ihan nahi prayojan bheda jani bare kari ekatra ganana. Ganana. Like we say Ganana in Hindi, and this is Ganana in Bengali, which means counting. Ekatra, in one list. Jani bare, to know. Bheda is difference. Asarera, of the useless persons. Prayojan, use. Ihan, in this connection. There is no need to name those who are useless. I have mentioned them only to distinguish them from the useful devotees. Verse number 12. Dhanya Rashi Mape Yaiche Patana Sahite Paschate Patana Udana Samskar Karite. Dhanya Rashi means heaps of paddy. In the growing stage, rice is called paddy. Paschate, later. Patana, useless straw. Ural, fanning, samskar, purification, karite, do. Yaiche as it is. Paddy is mixed with the straw at first, and one must fan it to separate the paddy from the straw. Purport: this example given by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is very appropriate. In the case of the Gaudiya Math members, one can apply a similar process. There are many disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. In executing the will of the spiritual there are many disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but to judge who is actually his disciple, to divide the useless from the useful from the useless, one must measure the activities of such disciples in executing the will of the spiritual master. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur tried his best to spread the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to countries outside India. When he was present, he patronized the disciples to go outside India to preach the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but they were unsuccessful because within their minds they were not actually serious about preaching his cult in foreign countries. They simply wanted to take credit for having gone to foreign lands and utilize this recognition in India by advertising themselves as repatriated preachers. Many Swamis have adopted this hypocritical means of preaching for the last 80 years or more, but no one could preach the real cult of Krishna consciousness all over the world. They merely come back to India falsely advertising that they had covered all the foreigners to the ideas of Vedanta or Krishna consciousness. And when they collected funds in India and lived satisfied lives of material comfort, as one fans paddy to separate the real paddy from useless straw by accepting the criterion recommended by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, one can very easily understand who is a genuine world preacher and who is useless. Verse number 13. Achyutananda Bada Shakha Acharya Nandana Ajanma Sevila Tenho Chaitanya Charana. A big branch of Advaita Acharya was his son Achyutanand. From the beginning of his life, he engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya. Verse 14. Chaitanya Gosanira Guru Keshava Bharati A Pitara Vakya Suni Dukha Paila Ati. When Achyutanand heard from his father that Keshav Bharati was a spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was very unhappy. Verse 15. Jagat Gurute Tumi Kara Aicha Upadesha Tomar E Upadeshe Nashta Haila Desha. He told his father, your instruction that Keshav Bharati is a spiritual master of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will spoil the entire country. Verse number 16. Choda Bhuvanera Guru Chaitanya Gosani Tandra Guru Anya Aikona Shastre Nai. Choda is 14. As we know, Bhuvanera, planetary systems, Guru Master Chaitanya Gosani, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Tandra Guru is spiritual master, Anya someone else. A this Kona, Kon. Shastra in scripture, Nai, there is no mention. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the spiritual master of the 14 worlds, but you say that someone else is his spiritual master. This is not supported by any revealed scripture. Verse number 17. Pancham Varshera Balak Kahe Siddhantera Sara Shuniya Paila Acharya Santosha Apar. When Advaitacharya heard this statement from his 5-year-old son Achyutananda, he felt great satisfaction because of his conclusive judgment. Purport. Commenting on the verses 13 through 17, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gives an extensive description of the descendants of Advaitacharya. The Chaitanya Bhagavad Antekhanda chapter 1 states that Achyutananda was the eldest son of Advaitacharya. The Sanskrit book Advaita Charita states Advaitacharya Prabhu had 3 sons who were devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Their names are Achyuta, Krishna Mishra and Gopal Das, and they were all born of the womb of his wife Sita Devi. Advaitacharya also had 3 more sons whose names were Balaram, Swarupa and Jagdish. Thus there were 6 sons of Advaitacharya. Among the 6 sons, 3 were strict followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and of these 3, Achyutananda was the eldest. Advaita Prabhu married in the beginning of 15th century Shakam, the late 15th century AD, when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to visit the village of Ramakeli While going from Jagannath Puri to Vrindavan during the Shakabd years 1433 and 1434, AD 1511 and 1512, Achyutanand was only 5 years old. The Chaitanya Bhagavat Antyakhanda 4th chapter describes Achyutananda at that time as Panchavarsha Vayas Madhura Digambara, only 5 years old and standing naked. Therefore, it is to be concluded that Achyutananda was born sometimes in the year 1428 AD 1506. Before the birth of Achyutananda, Advaita's Prabhu's wife Sita Devi came to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at his birth. Thus, it is not impossible that she had the other three sons by Advaitacharya within the 21 years between 1407 and 1428 Shakabda, AD 1486 to 1507. In the unauthorized book of this name, Sita Dvaita Charita, published in the Bengali in the unauthorized newspaper Nityananda Daini in 1792, Shakabda AD 1870, it is mentioned that Achyutanand was a class friend of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. According to the Chaitanya Bhagavat, this statement is not at all valid. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the renounced order of sannyas in the year 1431, Shakabda AD 1509, he came to the house of Advaitacharya Prabhu at Shantipura. At that time, as stated in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Antekhanda chapter 1, Achyutanand was only 3 years old. The Chaitanya Bhagavat further states that the naked child, the son of Advaita Prabhu, immediately came and fell down at the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Lord immediately took him up on his lap. Although he was not very clean, having dust all over his body, Lord Chaitanya said, "My dear Achyuta, Advaitacharya is my father, and thus we are brothers." Before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited his spiritual forms during his residence at Navadvip, he asked Sri Ram Pandit Srivas Thakur's brother to go to Shantipur and bring back Advaitacharya. Achyutananda joined his father at that time. It is said, Advaitera Tanaya Achyutananda Naam Parama Balak Seho Kande Aviram. Achyutananda also joined in crying in transcendental bliss. Again, when Lord Chaitanya beat Advaitacharya for explaining Sri Bhagavatam from an impersonalist viewpoint opposed to the principles of Bhakti Yoga, Achyutanand was also present. Therefore, all these incidents must have occurred only 2 or 3 years before Lord Chaitanya accepted the sannyas order. As mentioned above in the Chaitanya Bhagavat Antekhand chapter 1, it is stated that Achyutananda, the son of Advaitacharya, offered his obeisances to the Lord. Therefore, it should be concluded that from the very beginning of his life, Achyutananda was a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There is no information that Achyutananda ever married, but he is described as the biggest branch of the Advaitacharya family. From a book named Shakha Nirnayamrita, it is understood that Achyutanand was a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit and that he took shelter of Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri and engaged in devotional service. The Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila chapter 10 states that Achyutanand, the son of Advaitacharya, lived in Jagannath Puri, taking shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gadadhar Pandit in the last years of his life also lived with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri. There is no doubt, therefore, that Achyutanand was disciple of Pandit Gadadhar. In the accounts of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dancing in front of the car during the Rath Yatra's festival, Achyutanand's name is to be found many times. It is said that in the party of Advaitacharya from Shantipura, Achyutanand was dancing and others were singing. At that time, the boy was only 6 years old. Text 87 of Gaura Ganudesha Deepika, compiled by Sri Kavi Karnapura, describes Achyutananda as a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit and a great and dear devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. According to the opinion of some, he was an incarnation of Kartikeya, the son of Lord Shiva, and according to others, he was formerly the gopi named Achyuta. The Gaura Ganudesha Deepika 88 supports both these opinions. Another book, Narottam Vilas, compiled by Sri Narhari Das, mentions Achyutanand's presence during the festival at Khetari. According to the Sri Narhari Das, during the last days of his life, Achyutanand stayed in his house at Shantipura, but during the presence of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he lived at Jagannath Puri with Gadadhar Pandit. Verse number 18. Krishna Mishra Naam Ar Acharya Tanaya Chaitanya Gosani Baise Yanhara Hridaya. Krishna Mishra was the son of Advaita Acharya. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu always sat in his heart. Purport of the 6 sons of Advaita Acharya, 3 Achyutanand, Krishna Mishra and Gopal Das lived faithfully in the service of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Since Achyutanand did not accept a wife, he had no issue. The second son of Advaita Acharya, Krishna Mishra, had 2 sons, Raghunath Chakravarti and Dola Govinda. The descendants of Raghunath still live in Shantipura in the neighborhoods of Madan Gopal Pad, Gankar, Mirjapur and Kumar Khali. Dola Govind had 3 sons named Chanda, Kandarp and Gopinath. The descendants of Kandarp live in Balda in the village Jikabadi. Gopinath had 3 sons, Sri Vallabh, Pranavallabh and Keshava. The descendants of Sri Vallabh live in the villages known as Mashiyadara, which is Mahishadera, Damukadiya and Chandipura. There is genealogical table for the family of Sri Vallabh beginning from his eldest son Ganga Narayan. The descendants of Sri Vallabh's youngest son Ram Gopal still live in Damukadiya, Chandipura, Sholamari and so on. The descendants of Pranavallabh and Keshav live in Uthali. The son of Pranavallabh was Ratneshwara and his son was Krishna Rama, whose youngest son was Lakshmi Narayan. His son was Navakishore and Navakishore's second son was Ram Mohan, whose youngest son was Lakshmi Narayan. His son was Navakishore and Navakishore's second son was Ram Mohan, whose eldest son was Jagat Bandhu and whose third son Veerachandra accepted the sannyas order and established a deity of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Katwa. These 2 sons of Ram Mohan were known as Bada Prabhu and Chota Prabhu, and they inaugurated the circumambulation of Navadvip Dham. One may refer to the Vaishnav Manjusha for the complete genealogical table of Advaita Prabhu in the line of Krishna Mishra. So with this, we come to end of today's reading, and like we have found out that who started the circumambulation of Navadvip Dham. They were the 2 sons of Ram Mohan, known as Bada Prabhu and Chota Prabhu, which is Jagat Bandhu and Veerchandra. So thank you for joining. Wish you all a blissful week ahead. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.